Hi, buddies! Welcome to Emergency Pineapple Studios, where I talk about things that I love and hopefully you do too. Today, we're going to go back into the world of Pokemon and we're going to discuss yet again Pokemon that I think have the wrong types. This time, we're going to do Pokemon that originate from the Hoenn region, just a reminder that regional variants do not count. The premise of this video is the same as the last two, so without further ado, let's get started.
Starting us off is the Trico line. Now, what really strikes me odd is that not so much that they are pure grass type, it is more like why this entire line did not get a secondary type when both Mudkip and Torchic did upon their evolutions. I think Grovyle and Sceptile should have gotten a second type just like they did. Now, what type would I give them? I considered Dragon, except Dragon would offset the balance of the grass, water, fire starters. So, I had to choose a different option. Well, the option I decided on was electric because of the ability to lightning rod that a Grovyle and a Sceptile could potentially get. I think that having the grass electric type would make these Pokemon more viable for weather teams, especially in the generation where weather came out. Because of its grass typing, it could make use of sun teams, especially with like Solar Beam or even now Solar Blade. And if they were an electric type, they could get 100% accurate thunders in the rain. So, personally, I think a grass electric would have suited this Gecko very well, but I do understand why they are pure grass type. Next up is Azurill, and I still don't understand this Pokemon's typing. To be honest, both Marill and Azumarill were both introduced as water types, and later got the fairy type tacked onto them. However, Azurill was a normal type that got the fairy type tacked onto it. But the problem is not the fairy typing, it's the fact that it's a normal typing. Like, it is the only Pokemon I know that has completely changed its typing when it evolves. So, to be honest, I'm going to say that why wasn't it a water type to begin with? I think it just should have been one. There's nothing about this that doesn't say that, hey, I should not be a water type. It's blue, learns water type moves, and honestly, it's not really all that normal. So, why is it the normal type? Just make it a water type like the rest of its line. Now we move on to Sableye, and Sableye is in a weird spot. Its typing Ghost Dark makes total sense, but there's another type that makes sense for it, and that is the Rock type. There are so many dex entries about this thing loving rocks and the fact that it gets a lot of rock type moves that it being a rock type would not have surprised anyone. And to be honest, this is one of the few Pokemon that could have been three types. Like, you could see it as a Ghost Rock, you could see it as a Dark Rock type, and you could see it as, the type that it is, that being Ghost Dark. And it kind of suffers from the same thing that Charizard does, where three types fit it, and they just pick the combination that they like the best. For a while, it being the Ghost Dark type meant that it had no weaknesses. But nowadays, we have the Fairy type, which got rid of that particular little gimmick. So, there is that. I still think it would have made sense as a Rock type, but it still also makes sense with the typing that it has. Next up is Ninjask, and come on, this thing is a ninja. Like all the other ninja Pokemon, it should have been a Bug Dark type. Now, I get why it's a Bug Flying type, it's just a flying cicada. However, I think it was kind of robbed of the opportunity to be a Bug Dark type, and where Bug Dark is not the best typing, I think a very speedy Bug Dark type would have been the perfect Psychic Killer. Next we get to Wailord, and I'm gonna be honest, this one's gonna be very quick. Wailord is called the Float Whale Pokemon. It is a pure water type, but honestly, it deserves to be a water flying type more so than Gyarados does. It's literally a blimp whale. Like, make it a flying type, folks. This was a no-brainer. Torkoal, on the other hand, should have also gotten the steel type along with being a fire type. The Pokemon is literally a furnace turtle that shoots fire out of its mouth, and to be honest, the fact that it is a furnace or a forge, I think it would have done well as a steel type. On top of that, it learns Heavy Slam, Gyro Ball, and Iron Defense. As a fire steel type, this Pokemon would have been excellent and more of a defensive Pokemon than it already is. I do see that the 4 times ground weakness would have been a problem, but to be honest, I think that would have made Torkoal more unique. Why? I don't get it. I don't understand. There's nothing reptilian about this Pokemon. Why is it a dragon type? I really feel like when this Pokemon originally came out, it was just given the dragon type just to screw with the fans. I know it didn't exist at the time, but I think fairy better suits this opera singing bird than dragon does. So, please, can we fix this now? Like, it's not a dragon. It's a bird. Make it a fairy type, please. Next, we get to Milotic, and to be honest, this thing is just kind of like a feminine Gyarados, so I see no reason for it to just be a pure water type. I actually think this one would do well as a water dragon type, kind of like Kingdra. It would also make it genuinely kind of more unique away from Gyarados, who I also think should be a water dragon type. I also think, though, that if you don't want to give it the dragon type, Water Fairy also fits it fairly well. I want to note it here and now that I have no beef with Castform's typing as a normal type. Kind of like Arceus, where its type can be changed based on certain conditions, having its base form be a normal type makes total sense. My only beef is that when Hoenn came out, there were 4 weathers, and Castform has forms for 3 of them. Yes, I know, it's based off a water molecule, and there is no water in sand, but why specifically does it not have Sandstorm as the only weather it can't turn into? To be honest, this was just a stupid decision. Give it a Sandstorm form, please. Finally, we get to Groudon Kyogre, and to be honest, the fact that these two don't have 2 typings doesn't make sense to me. Groudon itself becomes a Fire Ground type in its primal form, but honestly, it should have just been a Fire Ground type to begin with. In contrast, I think Kyogre should have been a Water Electric type, so it could have made more use of the rain than it already does as a Water type. Not to mention, it can learn quite a few Electric type moves, and along with that, this Bringer of Storms being the Water Electric type would have made perfect sense, especially in its primal reversion. And those are all the Pokemon from Hoenn that I think were mistyped. If you think I missed one, or if you have some opinions of your own, leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. Have fun catching Pokemon.